Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thanks for making the time today to join me to learn more about ELD compliance. My name's Nicole and I'll be running today's webinar called Your Top Compliance Questions Answered. The ELD mandate was announced back in December of 2015 and finalized in February 2016. The implementation deadline is just 7 months away. And people still have a lot of questions about what they need to do in order to be compliant with these new laws. And that's because there's been a lot of misinformation floating around about the mandate, leading to a lot of confusion amongst owner-operators and fleets alike. During today's webinar, I'll go over the most commonly asked questions we get from owner-operators and hopefully help you find the answers that you're looking for. Before we get started, I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. So we'll be recording today's webinar and posting the video onto the BigRoad blog. You can visit our blog at blog.bigroad.com and you'll find recaps here of all of our previous webinars as well as information on what's happening in the industry, including new rules, regulation changes, and ELD mandate news. We post new content here twice a week. It's a great source for industry news and an easy way to keep yourselves up to date. If you submitted questions with your webinar registration, I've done my best to answer them throughout the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can enter them into the question box located on the GoToWebinar control panel. The question box is located on the lower right side of the window. And at the end of the webinar, I'll open the floor for a question and answer session. During this time, I'll answer all of the questions submitted by you. Now, we do get a lot of questions during a webinar, so I apologize in advance if I'm not able to answer them straight away. Along with the webinar recording, I'll post a recap of all of the questions that were asked and provide more detailed answers with links to any relevant content to help you out. And then tomorrow you'll be sent a follow-up email with a link to the recording and answers to the questions. So feel free to share this with anybody who might have questions about compliance. All right, let's get started. Here's what we're going to cover in today's webinar. We'll go over your top compliance questions by category, starting with general questions about ELDs and the ELD mandate. Next, we'll go over some questions about who is exempt from the ELD mandate. From here, we'll go through some hours of service related questions. And after that, we'll clarify some of the questions that you guys have about the differences between AOBRDs and ELDs. We'll also answer some questions that people have about BigRoad's compliance solutions. And we'll go over a question that we get a lot about FMCSA's approved vendors list. And then finally, we'll discuss BigRoad's solution to the ELD mandate for owner-operators. And then finally, we'll end the webinar by answering the questions that were submitted during the webinar. So we'll start with questions about ELDs and the specifics about the upcoming mandate. The first question we have is, what is the ELD mandate? The electronic logging device, or ELD mandate, is the commonly referred to name for a final ruling published in December of 2015 by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or the FMCSA, in the Federal Register. What are the key requirements of the ELD mandate? So the first thing is the mandatory use of either an automatic onboard recording device, or AOBRD, or an ELD by most commercial vehicle drivers who are currently required to prepare hours of service records, records of duty status. Then specified ELD performance and design standards. And the mandate also requires ELDs to be certified and registered with the FMCSA. It establishes what supporting documents drivers and carriers are required to keep. And finally, the mandate prohibits harassment of drivers based on ELD data or connected technology, such as a fleet management system. The rule also provides recourse for drivers who believe that they have been harassed. The next question is, what does an ELD record? So an ELD records the date, time, geographic location of a vehicle, engine hours, vehicle miles, driver or authenticated user identification, vehicle identification, and motor carrier identification. It also records event data, including the engine powering up and down, a driver logging in and out, duty status changes, personal conveyance or yard moves, assigned certification of the driver's daily record, location tracking at 60-minute intervals when the vehicle is in motion, And finally, vehicle malfunctions and diagnostic events. And what about privacy concerns? So ELD technology collects the same driver data that is currently monitored and recorded with paper logs. However, to address privacy as well as harassment concerns, there are limits on geographic location tracking and other measures in order to allow the driver to maintain a separation between on-duty and off-duty time. For example, when you're in personal conveyance mode, an ELD only needs to track your location to the nearest town or city or within a 10-mile radius. Whereas if you're in on-duty driving mode, it will have to track your location to the nearest 1 mile. The next question is, isn't there legal action against the ELD rule regarding the privacy issue? So interest groups have filed challenges concerning privacy on several occasions since the mandate was first proposed. On every occasion, the legality of the ELD rule has been maintained based on the multiple safeguards it includes that protects drivers and fleets. When does the ELD mandate go into effect? The ELD mandate is effective December 18th, 2017, meaning that all applicable CMVs will need to have an AOBRD or ELD installed by that date. If you have an AOBRD, which is slightly more flexible, installed by December 18th, then you will have until December 16th, 2019 to make the move to a fully compliant ELD device. And in the case of BigRoad'S DashLink, that would just take a simple software upgrade, so there's no need to swap out hardware. Will this be required in all states? Yes, it's going to be a requirement from the federal government that all commercial motor vehicles that are required to keep logs will need to have an ELD installed before the end of this year. Now, there are different rules for different states, so you'll need to check with the FMCSA to make sure that you're following the rules and regulations for your state, but it will apply to all states. Next question, with the new White House administration, how likely is it that owner-operators will need to get an ELD? What are the chances that this ruling will be overturned? So there's been a lot of coverage in the news as to the new administration and how it's going to impact the mandate. And I'm not a government regulation expert, nor do I have firm insight as to what will happen, but many FMCSA, CVSA, and DOT contacts have commented that the mandate is sticking and that nothing's going to change. And this is because it's already become law prior to the new president taking office, so it would not be part of his regulatory rollback program. And how will unassigned miles be accounted for in an ELD? So unassigned driving events are tracked at the truck level. When a driver logs in and connects to the DashLink in that truck, he'll be prompted to claim or reject any unassigned driving time. If he claims it, it's added to his logs. If he rejects it, an administrator will either need to prompt someone else to claim the driving time or annotate the event for an inspection. Next question is, are you required to show a DVIR on inspection? Yes, so you have to complete a DVIR at the end of each day and show it to enforcement upon inspection. The next question is, can a driver make duty status changes after he or she submits their daily logs? Will those changes be obvious to a DOT inspector, and who will make those changes? With an ELD, once a driver completes and signs off on his logs, he can't make any more adjustments. In fact, even before signing and sending them to you, he won't be able to make any changes because the electronic logging device records all of this information automatically. Any changes that need to be made will be done by an administrator on the back end, and those changes will need to be signed off on by the driver. And yes, these changes can all be seen by the DOT inspector. So this next set of questions relates to mandate exemptions. Who needs to comply with the mandate and have an ELD installed, and who doesn't? So the first question here is, does this rule apply to owner-operators and small fleets, or just larger fleets? And under the ELD mandate, owner-operators are required to use an ELD, so there's no exemption based on being a single truck operation or an owner-operator. However, you might qualify for one of the other exemptions that we're going to go over in the next questions. The next one is, we are a drive-away tow-away company. Do we need ELDs? If the vehicle that you're driving is part of the shipment, so it's empty and for sale, lease, or repair, then you are not required to use an ELD. And the reason for this is that the FMCSA does not expect you to carry multiple connectors with you in order to have something that works with every vehicle, as you usually don't know what you're going to be driving until the day of. Next one is, our drivers stay within the 100 air mile radius most of the time daily. Would we need ELDs? If you stay within the 100 air mile radius all of the time, then you are exempt. But as soon as you go outside of that 100 air miles, then you're required to run an ELD. And the same rule also applies to non-CDL freight drivers who drive within a 150 air mile radius of their starting location. A follow-up to that one is, we only drive outside of the 100 air mile radius some of the time. Do we need ELDs? Well, another exemption that you might fall under is the 8 and 30 rule. If you're keeping logs for no more than 8 days in a rolling 30-day period, not a calendar month, then you are also exempt from running an ELD. The biggest thing for you to look at is how you are currently required to keep your hours of service. So the 8 and 30 rule applies to people who keep records of duty status for that 8 days. So if you're running long haul for more than 8 days in a moving 30-day period, then you'll still need an ELD. Do the same rules apply to somebody who is hauling their own personal items, not for hire? So if you're hauling personal items and do not currently need to keep records of duty status, then you will not need to run an ELD. If you are driving a vehicle that requires you to have a commercial driver's license and keep records of duty status, then you will need to have an ELD. But no, if you're not, if you're driving your own personal vehicle for personal use, you're not under the direction of a motor carrier, then you don't need an ELD. Are private passenger carrying vehicles exempt? So once again, if you require a commercial driving license and you're not, or sorry, you are currently keeping logs, then you will probably need to get an ELD. However, you might qualify for another ELD exemption, which could depend on the distance that you're traveling and how often you're operating your vehicle. Do trucks older than the year 2000 need to run ELDs? Trucks with a model year of 2000 and newer will need to run an ELD, but there is the pre-model year 2000 exemption. So anyone driving a CMV with a model year of 1999 or prior will not need an ELD and can continue to create records of duty status in the way that they are today. And this is because the technology and connections aren't compatible with older engines, so it would be too difficult and costly for the FMCSA to expect drivers to comply. You can find your vehicle's VIN number by looking inside the door frame. And the next question is, we use a time clock. Do we need ELDs? Well, if you're not currently required to keep rods, then you won't need to run an ELD. You'll just continue to log in the same way that you've been required to prior to the mandate. Will livestock haulers have exemptions? There's no specific exemption for a livestock hauler under the mandate, so you're not exempt from running an ELD unless you fall under one of the other exemptions that we've outlined. If a driver returns to home base every night and only works 60 hours per week, are they still required to use an ELD? So it depends on what they're driving and where. If you're a commercial motor vehicle driver driving 60 hours a week and you are currently required to keep paper logs, then you're likely going to need an ELD. As a rule of thumb, if you're currently required to keep records of duty status, then you'll need to use an ELD after the mandate deadline. If you're not required to keep records of duty status, or if you qualify for one of the exemptions that we went over earlier, then you will not need an ELD. The next question is, our drivers are field mechanics that drive to job sites to work on heavy machinery, for example, wheel loaders, excavators, etc. Do they have specific regulations? So again, this depends on a number of factors. If they're driving vehicles that require a CDL, one exemption that might apply to them is that 100 air mile radius exemption that we touched on above. So if they only ever drive within a 100 air mile radius of their starting location, they won't need an ELD. And then the other could be the 8 and 30 rule that we also touched on. So if they're only required to keep logs 8 days in a rolling 30-day period. But generally speaking, if the FMCSA requires a driver to keep logs now, they'll need an ELD in time for the mandate this December. So this next question is, we are exempt from the new ELD rules, but how do we explain that? How do our drivers explain that to an enforcement official? So this comes down to the enforcement agents being educated by the FMCSA, and to be honest, we're not really sure how this is going to play out. You'll probably experience some growing pains here, so I'd recommend that you print out the ELD mandate final rule, highlighting the exemption that you fall under. And then remember, you can always challenge violations and fines using the data queues. So the next set of questions is in regards to hours of service regulations, why they were put in place, and clarifying some of those rules. First, why were hours of service regulations put in place? And the main goal of hours of service regulations is to prevent accidents caused by driver fatigue. To do this, hours of service regulations limit the number of hours a commercial motor vehicle driver can drive their vehicle and work while regulating brakes. This includes both truck and motor coach or bus drivers. And fatigue is prevented by keeping drivers on a 21 to 24-hour schedule to maintain their natural sleep-wake cycle. What is tracked when it comes to hours of service? To be compliant, drivers need to track their on-duty not driving time. So this includes time that you're working or required to be ready to work and not driving. It might include waiting to be dispatched from a terminal, time inspecting, fueling, or washing your truck, loading, unloading, or supervising staff, breakdowns or time spent dealing with maintenance issues, drug tests, on-duty driving time. So this is really straightforward. It's just the time that you spend driving your vehicle. Breaks. So this can be your 30-minute break or sleep berth, if that applies to you, to show that you are not operating your vehicle. And then finally, off-duty time. So this is when you are fully relieved of all on-duty work and responsibility of performing tasks for work. So you're free to do what you want to do and leave the place where your vehicle is parked. If you're not doing any work, paid or unpaid, for a motor carrier, and you're not doing any paid work for anyone else, you may record the time as off-duty. The next question is, occasionally I run over my time because of the time I spend waiting to load and unload on job sites. How can I more accurately document what is actually happening? So if you're over your time on a specific day, make note in the notes section located in the daily log for that day. You can also add a picture of, say, a loading receipt to prove the time that it took. However, that on-duty time will continue to work against you if you're over your hours. Unfortunately, the FMCSA and DOT inspectors don't sympathize with time overages based on waiting for loads regardless of the situation. So it'll likely come down to just adjusting to managing your time a little bit differently. Can you explain the split sleeper berth provision? Okay, so to qualify for the split sleeper berth provision, you need to be in sleeper mode for at least 8 hours, but no more than 10 hours. This rest period will not count as part of the 14 hours of on-duty time. Then you'll need a separate rest period that must be at least 2 consecutive hours, but less than 10. And this period can be off-duty in sleeper or in combination of both. This does count as part of your 14 hours, and it doesn't matter which rest period you take first, but after your second rest period has been completed, then you'll have your new hours available. The next set of questions I have here are about AOBRDs, ELDs, and the 2-year AOBRD extension clause, or as some of you hear it referred to as the grandfather clause. Let's start with this question to introduce the differences. What is the major difference between an ELD and an AOBRD? Well, in general, electronic logging devices are more restrictive and the rules surrounding them are more specific than they are with AOBRDs. There's also a big difference with the amount of data that is collected and shown on an ELD versus on an AOBRD. So you can see on the screen here what a daily log looks like with an AOBRD, and this is what's visible to a DOT officer. And then on this next screen, it's the same day of logs using an ELD. So as you can see, there are a great deal more events recorded and displayed. Another difference is what you can edit in both devices. Essentially, in an AOBRD, you can edit most things except for your actual drive time. And drive time is one of those things that's pretty firm in both. With an AOBRD, you can't edit drive time unless the driving was an error, but with an ELD, you can't edit it at all. With an AOBRD, you can still edit your vehicle location, and you can change a driving event so that you can adjust your duty status from on-duty to off, from on-duty driving to personal conveyance or yard move, depending on what you need there. And I'll include a link to a blog post and webinar recording that we did last month that goes over this a little bit more in detail in tomorrow's blog. The next question is, will the BigRoad app on a cell phone be accepted as a grandfathered device? There's a lot of people that are confused about whether the app will be compliant with the mandate, but no, the BigRoad mobile app is an electronic logbook app, and no electronic logbook app on its own is compliant with the upcoming mandate. In order to comply, you will need an engine-connected ELD or AOBRD. So something that plugs into the vehicle's ECM and automatically records your records of duty status. In order to take advantage of the grandfather clause, you can install an AOBRD, which is more flexible than an ELD, before the December 18th, 2017 deadline, and then you can continue to use it as an AOBRD until December 16th, 2019. BigRoad's DashLink can be used as either an AOBRD or an ELD. Next question is, if I'm signed up with BigRoad's DashLink before the mandate deadline, will I be able to run it as an AOBRD until 2019? So BigRoad's DashLink can be installed and used as an AOBRD until the extension deadline of December 16th, 2019. When you're ready to make the move to a more restrictive ELD, so before that 2019 deadline, it can be done with a simple software upgrade. So there's no need to purchase new hardware. Once you have this installed, you can make the switch anytime. You can either wait until that December 2019 deadline or sooner, depending on your comfort level with ELDs. It's totally up to you. How will enforcement deal with trucks who are still using AOBRDs until December 2019? So enforcement agents already know what the AOBRD logs look like and have been trained on how to fully inspect them. The FMCSA is currently working with enforcement agents to train them on ELD inspections, so those inspections probably won't run as smoothly for that first little while. The next question that we have about AOBRDs and ELDs is, can I stockpile AOBRDs that aren't assigned to trucks in case I change trucks or carriers, or I add more trucks to my fleet? And yes, you can stockpile AOBRDs and move them between trucks. They don't need to be assigned to one vehicle, so it's a great way to maintain some flexibility for the next 2.5 years. If you change carriers and they allow you to use the AOBRD that you already have, you can continue to use it. The next question is, can I edit my logs using BigRoad, and if so, what will be visible upon inspection? So if you're running as an AOBRD, most aspects of your logs are editable, as you can still edit much of your logs legally with an AOBRD. However, once you turn on an ELD, logs are no longer editable. The information is pulled directly from the engine, and this is a requirement by the DOT and FMCSA. So you'll find this with all ELD providers. A supervisor can make edits to the logs under the ELD mandate, but the driver needs to sign off and accept them. There will be a trail of changes tracked that an inspecting officer will be able to see. The next one is, will yard move still be available if I move from an AOBRD to an ELD? So when you're running an ELD, you'll need to be put into on-duty status in order to use yard move. With an AOBRD, you'll still be able to use yard move without it affecting your hours of service. This is one of the many bonuses of using an AOBRD until 2019. Okay, so this next set of questions is about BigRoad solutions, our features and capabilities. First one is, what device do you recommend for a small trucking company? And this one's easy. Of course, I'd recommend DashLink, but not just because I'm biased, although of course I am a little bit. DashLink is just really great for small operations because it's one of the most affordable options. There's no upfront hardware fee. Our licensing cost is really low. and it's also really simple and easy to use. Drivers are always commenting on how easy using BigRoad has made their jobs. And another great thing about DashLink is its flexibility. So you can use it as an AOBRD and continue to edit your logs until you're ready to switch into ELD mode. And then there's how much DOT officers love BigRoad. So you don't know how many times we've had our customers comment on how when a DOT officer sees that they're using BigRoad, they wave them off or speed them right through their inspections because they know and trust our solution. The next one is, does BigRoad have a personal conveyance allowance? And yes, the BigRoad app does have a personal conveyance option, and this allows drivers to make small moves, like moving the truck around a yard, without it kicking them into on-duty driving. Next one is, will drivers be able to change the start to noon rather than midnight? So currently we only offer midnight to midnight cycles, but I've added a note from our developers to add noon to noon in the future. If you email support@bigroad.com, they can offer you a few tricks that'll help you out in the meantime. Next question is, what is the total cost for each truck or driver with BigRoad? Are there any hidden fees? For a single operator, single asset, it's $25 per month. There are no installation fees, no maintenance fees. It's just a simple one-year contract without any hidden fees. We do require 1 year upfront payment though. Can we pay for the hardware and avoid a monthly fee? So we don't sell our DashLink ELD hardware outright, and we do not charge you for the hardware unit itself. You get the device and simply pay a subscription fee. Unlike many vendors who charge hundreds of dollars for the unit upfront and then charge you a high monthly fee, we have one of, if not the lowest monthly subscription fees for ELDs available today. How does BigRoad track IFTA mileage? So the vehicle mileage report in the BigRoad web app provides raw mileage data for each truck across all jurisdictions that it traveled for the report time period. And then this makes creating those IFTA fuel tax reports a lot easier. The next one is, how does BigRoad tie into the ECM of a vehicle? So BigRoad's DashLink is a plug-and-play device, and this means the DashLink hardware plugs into your vehicle's diagnostic port just through a cord. It can be installed by a driver within minutes, and there's no permanent changes to the vehicle required. So the driver then pairs the DashLink ELD to their Android or Apple mobile phone or tablet, and then they run the BigRoad mobile app and connect to the DashLink via Bluetooth. The next question is, what kind of options do you have for pickup trucks and big trucks? So our DashLink ELD is compatible with all heavy-duty trucks and motor coaches, as well as other vehicles such as pickup trucks and cube vans that are manufactured after 2008. We can do this by offering different cords and pin configurations. You just have to let us know what you need. The next question is, with BigRoad, if you don't send the logs to an email, are they saved electronically? Do you need to print out days or weeks when you're off? If you're using the BigRoad mobile app, you can pull up logs through the app from the last 7 days or 14 days, depending on which country you are driving in. And that will allow you to present the required logs during an inspection. If you need to go back further than what's required, for example, for an audit, then you can log into the BigRoad web app and all of your logs are saved there indefinitely. Will BigRoad's DashLink device be compliant for 2019? Yes. So as of right now, we've submitted all of the necessary documentation that we need in order to be added to the FMCSA's list of vendors, and we're just waiting on them to add us to the list. We should be there any day now. So you can pick up the DashLink now as an AOBRD and then make the switch to ELD mode when you're ready, anytime before that 2019 deadline. Will BigRoad be considered an e-log? So it depends on which BigRoad solution that you're using. The BigRoad mobile app is an electronic logbook which helps you manage your hours of service, but on its own will not be compliant with that ELD mandate. I think the confusion here is that many electronic logbooks are referred to as e-logs, but a lot of people also use the term e-log to refer to engine-connected devices. In order to comply with the ELD mandate, by December 18th, 2017, you will need to have an ELD or AOBRD installed in your vehicle. BigRoad's DashLink is an engine-connected solution that connects to the BigRoad mobile app, and if you have the DashLink installed by that 2017 deadline, then you will be compliant with the ELD mandate. And then finally, we do get a lot of questions about the FMCSA list, but as they're all really similar, I've summarized them into one, and hopefully it gives you the answers that you're looking for here. So the FMCSA has a list of certified ELD providers. However, since this is a self-certification process, how can you tell which providers are legitimate? And is BigRoad on the FMCSA's list? So the ELD self-certification list is exactly that. A list where vendors have said that their device is compliant with the FMCSA's guidelines. However, they do provide an optional test that is extensive that vendors can use to ensure their device meets all of the requirements of an acceptable electronic logging device. So this test is not mandatory, and it is a self-certification list, so you'll notice that a lot of the providers that registered early might fall under the category of devices that don't really meet the FMCSA's requirements. I'd be wary of any of the devices listed on the first page of that self-certification list, as many of them listed within days of the final spec being made public, which really wouldn't give them enough time to build a fully compliant product. BigRoad has been taking the time to create a fully compliant device, which is why we haven't listed yet. And now that we've taken the time to ensure that we've checked all of our boxes, we've gone through extensive field and in-house testing and thoroughly checked against the FMCSA's requirements. We've participated in their tests, and now we've submitted our documentation to get on that list. So we're just waiting for the FMCSA to update that list with us on it, which should be in the next couple of days. Okay, so we've covered a lot of compliance questions, and now it's up to you guys to find a solution that meets your unique needs as owner-operators. Owner-operators like you have a lot of hats to wear in your day-to-day operations, and you're probably concerned with how this mandate is going to affect your bottom line. You need a solution that's going to make compliance easy for you without breaking the bank. And that's why I want to talk to you briefly about the BigRoad mobile app and DashLink ELD. It's the most affordable, reliable, simple, and flexible ELD solution available. Let's start with the BigRoad mobile app. This is our electronic logbook and hours of service management application. The BigRoad mobile app is completely free for owner-operators and drivers to use and can be downloaded to a smartphone or tablet from the Google Play and iTunes stores. The BigRoad mobile app takes the guesswork out of logging. It enables you to easily create clean, inspectable, error-free logs while accurately tracking your hours of service. We're always hearing about how much drivers enjoy this app because it makes their jobs easier. They don't need to worry about wrong calculations, running over their hours, or getting a violation for something that's so easily avoidable. The app is one of the top-rated apps for hours of service. We consistently get 4.5 and 5-star ratings from our users on both platforms. And you can give it a try for yourself for free. Visit bigroad.com/driver and enter your phone number into the bar at the top of the page. We'll send you a link to download the correct version for your device, and you can also download it by visiting the Google Play or iTunes stores and searching for BigRoad. And then finally, the solution that everyone should get onto if they need a compliance solution is our DashLink. With the electronic logging device mandate getting closer, owner-operators are starting to make the move now. Not only because they need to comply, but because they've seen how engine-connected logging can drastically improve their operations. When using an engine-connected device, potential hours of service violations disappear. These devices automatically do many of the things that you, as a driver, can get dinged for during a violation. And then you're also going to be building up your record of clean inspections and compliance, while other owner-operators are still at risk from using paper logs and even electronic logbooks. This means that brokers will be more likely to select you if you have a clean record and are placing safety first. You can also see reduced insurance rates, which can save you even more money. And our DashLink really is the easiest and most affordable ELD mandate compliance solution that you're going to find on the market today. It has no upfront hardware costs, a low monthly fee, and you'll have the tools that you need to comply with the ELD mandate without worrying about what it's going to cost. You just simply plug the DashLink device into the ECM of a truck, pair it with your BigRoad mobile app via Bluetooth, and you're ready to go. There's no expensive installation or permanent changes to your truck required. The device pulls the information directly from the computer within the truck so that you can focus on driving rather than logging. And as we discussed, you can run the DashLink as an AOBRD until 2019. If before that you want to go fully ELD compliant, you can do so with the flick of a switch. So you control when you're ready to transition from an AOBRD to an ELD. Okay, and that wraps up your top compliance questions answered webinar. If you have any questions that weren't answered during the webinar, please enter them into the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And while we're waiting for those to come in, there's a couple of things that you can take advantage of. If you're interested in learning more about BigRoad solutions, here are some ways that you can. If you haven't done so already, I invite you to download the BigRoad mobile app and give our free electronic logbook a try. Again, you can do this by visiting bigroad.com/driver. You can enter your phone number into the box at the top of the page, and we'll send you a link to download the app. And if you're interested in learning more about our DashLink, you can visit bigroad.com/dashlink and fill out the request demo form. Okay, let's just wait a couple minutes for some questions to follow in, or a couple moments, really. Okay. So the first question that we have is a couple of people are looking for some clarity about log editing. So to go over this, with an ELD, you can't really change anything that has been automatically recorded. From the web application, there are very limited edits that you or an administrator will be able to make, but they'll need to be annotated. So for example, you can change your status from off-duty to on-duty not driving with a note that explains that you maybe logged training time incorrectly as off-duty, and the edit and annotation need to be verified by you inside the mobile app. The edit is not accepted until you confirm it from the mobile app and resubmit your record of duty status for the day. However, with an AOBRD, you can still edit your vehicle location, you can change an event, and so you can just adjust your duty status from on-duty to off, from on-duty driving to personal conveyance or yard move. And again, BigRoad's DashLink can be used as an AOBRD or ELD whenever you're ready to move to a more restrictive ELD. Next question is from Mike, who asks, I have an eLog app on my phone. Will that be compliant? So although electronic logbooks can make hours of service tracking and compliance easier, it's important to understand that they are not ELD mandate compliant solutions. This is because in section 395.2 of the ELD mandate, the FMCSA states that an ELD must be integrally synchronized with specific operations of the motor vehicle in which it is installed. So this means that it must be engine connected, which an electronic logbook is not. Engine connected devices like ELDs and AOBRDs connect to an app in order to communicate with and complete the automated logs. But an electronic logbook app alone is not enough to run in compliance after December 18th of this year. So how does the DashLink record the data for our drivers are in an area with no cell service? It'll continue to record in the back end, and then it'll connect again once you get cell service. Okay, so it looks like that's it for questions. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.